AI is going to transform the world very fast.
Like next year?
5-ish years.
Okay.
I think in 5-ish years, we'll see things that in the common parlance, when you say AGI, it won't actually be AGI, but to the average person, it will kind of appear to be AGI. And I think we'll have that in 5, maybe 10 years.
Welcome back to the Quantus podcast. We're here with a very special guest today. We've got Dr. Steve Hsu, professor of theoretical physics at Michigan State University. Did I get that right?
You got it perfectly right.
Okay. Well, so you're a polymath. You also have done very interesting work in genetics and psychometrics as well.
Yes.
So you've got a real an interesting, I'd say kind of holistic viewpoint of the world. You got but I'd like, maybe can you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are. I don't know, where's your family from?
Well, ethnically, my dad immigrated from China in 1948 before the communists won the Civil War.
Okay.
So he's been in the country for a long time. And I grew up in Ames, Iowa, which is a college town in the Midwest, where Iowa State University is. And my dad was a professor there. And then...
A professor of what? What was your dad?
Aerospace engineering.
Okay, all right.
Fluid dynamics, wind tunnels, stuff like that.
Okay, so good genes, yeah.
Yeah, pretty good. And then I early on decided I was interested in math and physics, those kinds of things, science, and was educated. I benefited from the finest education America could offer. I went to Caltech as an undergrad, PhD at Berkeley. Junior fellow at Harvard, and my first job as a professor was at Yale University.
Okay.
So I've pretty much seen the whole academic sphere in the United States and globally as well.
Okay. Well, and you're still teaching, is that right?
I'm professor at Michigan State right now.
Okay.
The other track of my life, which is a little bit unusual, is that I founded my first tech startup in the very end of the 20th century, actually. And that startup was actually in encryption technology, which you crypto bros probably like, back in the day. Actually, because of that, I think I was actually present at some of the early meetings with Satoshi, and I remember reading that white paper, the old school original white paper when it first came out, and these meetings were debating the core concepts and stuff, but I stupidly didn't buy any Bitcoin because I thought it would all go to zero someday, which,
Not yet.
But anyway, so I'm a little bit unusual that I have one foot in academia and then one foot in the Silicon Valley world.
Yeah, that is pretty unusual. I mean, I think biology also sits at this intersection of you're interested in the theory, but you also want to do and build.
Right.
And so, do you want to talk about what you're building?
Sure. There are 3 companies operating right now that I'm a co-founder of. One is in genomics applied to human reproduction. So that company, called Genomic Prediction, genotypes embryos that are produced in IVF. So families that are going through IVF, in vitro fertilization, we are able to read out the DNA sequence of each embryo, and then through AI and machine learning, which is my academic research in that area, we can predict complex traits of the individual from the DNA alone. So you can tell which of your embryos is high or low risk for heart disease. You can tell which one is going to be the tallest. You could potentially tell possibly which one is going to be the smartest. In the future, you'll be able to even figure out what their facial morphology will be, what they'll look like from the DNA.
Wow.
So that's one startup. Another related startup called Othram solves cold cases. Not just cold cases, actually. I mean, we have predominantly solved cold cases. We've solved 1,000 cold cases, but eventually hope to be allowed by the police to solve more ongoing investigations. And that company also operates with very, very little DNA from the crime scene. And from that, we can produce a genotype for that person. And typically, we'll be able to find a close relative match, like someone who's like a second cousin or closer, from DNA databases that we have available to us. And that we can tell the police, go interview these 3 people. The killer is one of the 50 or 100 closest relatives of these 3 people.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just having that person's DNA. You can do a kind of like a nearest neighbor search.
No, you can find. I mean, you can literally say like this person is a first cousin of the killer, or you could say this person is a first degree relative, like father, brother, of the killer. So we can do that kind of thing, and it will become, I think, eventually standard for police practice. But right now, it's predominantly only applied to cold cases. Like we've solved cases that are like 100 years old.
Wow. Okay.
And there's one more company.
Go ahead.
Which is an AI company using large language models. We're currently mainly focused on getting small models, vision language models running on commodity, very inexpensive hardware, like $25, $100 chipsets that could go in a drone, could go in a little companion for your child, or a security camera.
Security camera. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So that's a third company that I founded.
Okay. So you're quite prolific in this field. I mean, are you personally managing these companies, or is it sort of like you're the chief scientist?
So the first company I founded, the encryption company, I was actually the CEO. But subsequently, I've been mostly a founder, but not. Usually, I'm looking for a CEO.
I see.
So usually, like in the case of Othram, the investors in genomic prediction, when they invested in that idea, I told them, hey, there's a second deep tech idea that's now possible based on the genetic technology and the machine learning capabilities. We need to find a CEO who can run Othram. And then I think there's a lot of potential for that company. And so we had to search for like about a year before we found the right guy. So that's a typical MO for me, and I'm not usually involved in these three companies that I just described to you. I'm not actually involved in day-to-day stuff, but I'm on the boards, and I deal with the investors and like some kind of major strategic things, and the science actually. Yeah.
So you're a real scientist.
Yeah, I mean that's what they tell me.
But why do you care about science? Why is that inspiring? Why not do like something else?
Yeah, so I mean, this goes back to when I was a kid. There are just basic questions about the universe, how it operates, how our brains operate, how our DNA operates to build us, what's possible with artificial minds, what is possible, what are the most fundamental building blocks of the universe, and how do they interact? Those are all questions that, if we as a species are any good, I hesitate to say you as an individual are any good, but if we as a species are any good, we should try to answer those questions.
Sure. To me, it's sort of like, I mean, the root word is Latin for knowledge, right? And it's sort of, but it's also, it's related to power or technology. It's sort of like the knowledge confers a predictive ability. Like, okay, if I do this, then this is the consequence. And
yeah, so physics is the main subject, if you think about it, for humans to study, in which if Feynman, my mentor, my hero, used to say, the reason I went to Caltech is to study under Feynman. He used to say, the fundamental question in physics, which essentially is all of science, is if I do this, and like what he meant by that at the time was like he had a little ball of charge, and you shake the ball of charge. And for those of you who never studied physics, when you shake the little ball of charge, it causes an electromagnetic wave. And almost all of our technology, these, with some exceptions like nuclear physics or something, are basically just that, just using electromagnetic effects.
So you kind of like you wiggle the input and see what output changes?
Well, A causes B. And physics is the science that actually studies the most fundamental causal linkages between the most fundamental objects in the universe. So everything that you deal with, like if you're a chemist or biologist or material scientist, semiconductor engineer, you're dealing with the fundamental primitives, a charged particle called an electron, which as far as we can tell, you cannot subdivide an electron. And strangely, every electron in the universe is identical to every other electron in the universe. And if you really studied physics and got to the PhD level, you realize every electron in the universe is an excitation of a special kind of field, a quantum field, which explains why every electron is identical to every other one. So
It's almost mystical.
Well, no, I don't want to say it's mystical.
Okay.
So I know you're coming from Bali.
Sure. No, I mean, I'm just like, it's profound.
There is an instability toward that kind of thinking, but the whole purpose of physics is to demystify. So demystify. So if I tell you how many charges are in this ball, and I shake it a certain way, I can make an absolutely perfect prediction for the form of the wave that emanates from this, okay? And physics is a subject that aspires to that level of precision about the most fundamental primitives in the universe and the causal relationships between what we can observe.
But this sort of causality is also mirrored in the mind, right? You have neurons firing together because they wired together, and this sort of like, it's kind of an inferred causality. You're talking about something much more ironclad and profound.
Right. So that's why I keep emphasizing physics is the fundamental science, because we're not punting. We don't punt on like, I saw A, then I saw B, and they might be related. Did A cause B, or is A correlated to B? The question of causation might be left like indeterminate.
Sure.
Physics is positively asserting causal relationships between what is happening in the universe. Now, you might say like, oh, you'll never figure this out because, when I think about green unicorns, there's some mystical beam that heads into your brain, then you start thinking about green unicorns. Maybe that actually happens in the universe. I'm very open-minded.
Sure.
But the point of physics is to aspire to the things which we can study at the level of precision that I just described. And it turns out, as far as we can tell, including the workings of your brain, everything is in that category. Everything is just the individual electrons exerting electromagnetic forces on other electrons, and literally everything is built from that kind of thing.
Well, so this is quite interesting because it sounds kind of deterministic, right?
It's not necessarily deterministic, because when you introduce quantum mechanics, then there could be one interpretation of quantum mechanics is that there's true randomness in the universe. This is a very, in a sense, controversial subject among physicists who have a philosophical bent. Not all physicists care about this. They just accept standard quantum mechanics. And standard quantum mechanics says that when you measure an object, you measure the state of a quantum object, you collapse it to a particular outcome, but the specific outcome you get is probabilistic. It's truly random.
So we've sort of, so in the one hand, there is this aspiration to a perfect chain of causality of A causes B.
Yeah. So the state of the quantum state caused the probability distribution from which I threw the dice and determined what I observed, but it doesn't actually cause the specific outcome. That is true randomness.
Okay.
However, there is a perfect causal relationship between the nature of the quantum state and the probability distribution that governed the outcome. So in some sense, we've sort of it's like we've squeezed down the uncertainty into a specific probability distribution, and we feel quite confident that it can't be squeezed down any further. Exactly. So this is one of the essential points that physicists still are investigating and fighting over, and
So I know that there's different, sort of factions of quantum physicists, right? There's the sort of many worlds, and there's the Copenhagen, and there's some other ones.
Yes.
Can you sort of, do you have a strong opinion about this, or are you sort of like shut up and
No, I have a strong opinion. The predominant interpretation, which was handed down to us by our elders, who were somewhat normie, and quantum mechanics was a shock to the whole world of physicists, and so many people were happy just to have a set of rules and shut up and calculate. And so that Copenhagen prediction is the one where when you make a measurement on a quantum system, the wave function collapses to a particular outcome, and the particular outcome that you observe is determined by this probability distribution, and there's true randomness in the universe. That's the Copenhagen picture. The many worlds picture is that there is a deterministic evolution of the quantum state, and it actually can evolve into superpositions where one outcome is realized and the other outcome is realized. And then the wave function describing my brain becomes correlated to that outcome through my observing the outcome of the experiment. And one version of me, one description of me lives on one branch of the wave function. The other one that saw the other outcome lives on the other branch. And that's why it's referred to as many worlds, because
the wave branching at every moment.
So there's never a collapse of the wave function. There's just a purely deterministic evolution of the wave function. But there are instantiations or versions of me that observe different outcomes.
But I guess the question I always have for this interpretation is, I still have I personally measure the thing, and then I get a particular reading, not all possible readings.
Well, you're not aware of the other branch, and you're not aware of the other version of you.
And so, what determines what I'm aware of and what I'm not aware of? It seems like doesn't that just lead straight back into Copenhagen?
So it sounds a little woo, but in fact, the way that even the most conservative physicist would analyze a phenomenon called decoherence, which is very central to quantum computing. So the main thing that quantum computer engineers need to overcome is decoherence. As you watch decoherence as a process, and we understand it very, very well now because as I said, every time you try to build a qubit or a quantum system or a gate, you're fighting decoherence. So we have to understand it with great accuracy. Okay. You can see the two versions of you losing contact with each other as a direct consequence of decoherence. So we understand that process very well. And so what people like me who do accept many worlds find very frustrating by our colleagues who don't accept it is that we all agree what's happening as decoherence is occurring and these two branches of the wave function are becoming exponentially the probability that one can influence the other becomes exponentially small. We can see the branching into the many worlds actually occurring. But our conservative brethren who are Copenhagenists, idiots in my view, they essentially say like, oh yeah, I see this happening, but I'm just going to by hand assert that at some point an actual collapse occurs and poof, this one disappears and there's just this one. So you see this happening, and then you say, oh, but I can't accept that. So this one must go poof, and this is the real one. And there's a probability that this happens, and this one just didn't happen at all.
Okay, can I double click on that? When you say you can see this cusp occurring.
So it's in the mathematical description, and it's also under certain circumstances reversible. I could actually reverse it back.
As in experimentally, we can push.
We have to build these quantum computers, which you fear and loathe so much. We have to have exquisite control over these exact primitives, which are the most fundamental building blocks, like an electron spin, the spin on a cold atom, some flow of electrons in a superconducting junction. All of these things that we are developing, the experimental physicists are developing exquisite control over them. So the thing like the sort of beginnings of the branching of a wave function, we can control with absolute power, absolute precision.
So okay. So let's double click on decoherence.
Yeah.
Let me give you my sort of incomplete understanding. So the idea is you want these qubits, you want them to entangle with each other and with nothing else. Right, you want it to be sort of like precisely isolated.
Yeah. You want an isolated system with entanglement only between the qubit, the quantum information carrying degrees of freedom, and not with the outside environment. Which is why it's quite hard to do these things, like implement Shor's algorithm.
Sure. I see that. So, but then the decoherence is when it gets entangled with other stuff that's not supposed to.
Other stuff.
So in some sense, it's kind of a pejorative term derived from the fact that I want it to do something and it's not doing what I want.
In the specific setting where you are trying to use a resource like quantum entanglement or the quantum properties of these primitives in order to do computation, the way that for a classical computer you have something which manifests as 0 or 1, right? You have a gate, a quantum gate, or some thing, nano feature that either has some charge on it or doesn't have some charge on it. It's 0 or it's 1. So you're trying to create some thing which is an instantiation of an information processing system, like an abstract qubit.
You're taking like a math idea and trying to bake it into reality.
Exactly. And you don't want it also like connected to some other messy crap, which isn't part of that abstraction that you want. You want to realize Shor's algorithm as this abstraction, but if the individual qubits, like interact just slightly with the like there's some stray electric charge from some ion that goes by, and it kind of perturbs the qubit as it's going by. Like, oh shit, that wasn't part of my abstract algorithm. What did that do to me? Did that just inject a bunch of noise into my Shor's algorithm, and I'm not going to get the right cryptographic, I'm not going to get the right factorization or whatever. That's the problem that they have to overcome. They have to exquisitely isolate every qubit, but then to execute a gate, they have to bring the qubits together and make them interact in precisely the right way. Then they have to separate them again, and this whole thing has to last through many, many, many steps to factor a 2048-bit. Is that right too? What do you guys use now?
So, we use discrete logs in crypto, but
but whatever the key length is, like it's a lot of steps that you're trying to implement.
It's right. Yeah, it's like thousands or even millions of gates.
And the main thing, and the other thing, which is a little bit in the technical weeds, is the number of different ways that your qubit system can decohere through environmental interactions is manifold. There's so many. When you actually try to do it practically in the lab, there's a little bit of accumulated static charge on the bottom of the table that, we didn't think about that. We didn't figure out how to error correct for that.
Or there's
it's okay. Don't tell the investors. Okay. Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways this could go wrong.
Of course.
And I was reading today even cosmic rays can affect
100%. 100%.
So you got to put it in some kind of lead
you better bury it underground. Yeah.
It's pretty bananas. But it also seems to represent a kind of a profound step forward in it's sort of demonstrating mastery over reality.
100%. So physics, modern physics, experimental physics. So I'm a theorist, so I'm a lazy guy who just thinks about things and does some math.
Sure.
Those guys have to fucking build these things, okay? And when you build it, then you're dealing with all the possible things that can go wrong. It's not just my abstract, I rotate the qubit 45 degrees, and then I put it through a gate that does this with the other qubit. It's like very nice, lovely math. I'm sure you can raise a lot of money from credulous investors based on that. But when the guy actually has to build it, he has a lot more shit to deal with.
Okay, so there's always this kind of, the sort of specialization of knowledge in human society creates all these sort of practical issues of it's an esoteric or complex topic that only a small number of people understand.
Correct.
So then that gets filled with all kinds of hallucinations or outright malicious misinterpretations.
Yes.
And reality hasn't exactly given us a sort of authentication mechanism other than technology. Like, can you push the button and make it go boom?
Good. Yeah.
And so how? Okay, what would be let's say I don't have an expensive lab, but I would like to. Is there a simple way for me to observe or experience quantum effects in a way that's quite. I know there's the string and the laser with the double slit, but is there anything else?
I think the best thing, so just rephrasing your question,
sure.
Imagine you're a busy guy. You don't have time to take multivariable calculus and linear algebra, and then take the undergrad quantum mechanics class, and then undergraduate classical electromagnetism, and learn about Hamiltonian systems, and then go to graduate school and take graduate level quantum mechanics and take graduate level electrodynamics, and you don't have time for all that. Well, life is too short, right? But you still want to understand this topic. Is that the question you're asking?
Well,
me,
I guess
right?
I like to think of collapsible explanations.
Yeah,
where there's the one sentence, and there's the one paragraph, and there's
so
the
this
one page.
This is where we get into, before we started taping, the concept of G loading. So some things are just not compressible without intense loss of understanding and meaning into simpler things. So the whole point I was emphasizing about physics is you can't make the primitive any simpler. You have a point-like thing and it has a charge. Well, what's a charge? Oh, a charge is a source for electromagnetic field. Oh, what's an electromagnetic field? Oh, well, this is this vector field that exists everywhere in the universe and it carries energy. So all of the things I just said are primitive concepts that can't be broken into even more primitive concepts because they themselves are de novo concepts that the human brain had to master to understand what's happening in the universe. So physics is the subject that can't be further compressed. So I know venture bro, coin bro, quantum computing grifter.
Sure.
They would all love to be like, oh, well, we just, entanglement is a resource, man. Let's put entanglement on the chain. And, so people would love to say shit like that, but it's okay. I mean, look, I like, I like Looney Tunes and The Simpsons and stuff.
Sure.
And Rick and Morty, but it's not actually understanding what's happening.
No, I hear you, but also, physics has it. I mean, part of revolutions that happen in physics
Yes.
are people redrawing the abstractions in a way that's actually like a simpler or lower energy level than previously, right? I mean, consider the example being like before we, like heliocentric versus geocentric, right? In some sense, you could get away with using either of those coordinate systems, but one of them is going to require a lot more bits to sort of get the same predictive.
Sure. It's true that within physics, there might be simplifications and those like better ways to think about things which make it easier for physicists to manipulate the concepts and get to conclusions. But those steps that I talked about in terms of a many-year educational process to get to that point are still, they're still going to be there. So
well, sure, they might be like you take the steps faster, or you sort of
maybe we've been working on this for a long time. I mean, quantum mechanics is an old, the basic rules were developed 100 years ago.
Wow,
100 years ago. When Einstein and these early quantum guys used to meet in Berlin, so at that time Germany was by far the most advanced scientific country, and the quantum revolution largely happened there. And they used to meet in cafes and in seminars at the universities in Berlin. So there's a sort of quantum club that a lot of these guys like Schrödinger and Einstein, all these guys born, they would all be at this thing. And they themselves, who were quite smart people, said to themselves, a lot of them said, like, the quantum world, or the atomic world, as they said at the time, the quantum world is too complex for the human brain. It's just beyond what humans are ever going to understand. And all these concepts are having to be introduced, like, infinite dimensional vector space, which we call Hilbert space. And like all these concepts had to be introduced that those guys at the time were saying, like, yeah, humans are not really capable of understanding this. And now it's been 100 years since that. Still, only 0.01% maybe of the population, or maybe less, actually understands quantum mechanics. However, if you make an estimate of what fraction of the modern world, modern GDP, derives from things which you would not be able to do without at least some understanding of quantum mechanics, some people say it's 20-30%.
Okay, wow.
So depending on how you define it, but like
Sure.
this little mic, whatever your laser point, television, supercomputers, any kind of semiconductor process,
GPS.
yeah. So
physics kind of rules the world.
well, I'm not saying it rules the world, but I'm saying like it is a brute fact of our reality that some guys figured out some stuff, and that allowed human civilization to do a lot more stuff. But very, very few living humans at any given time understand the stuff. That's all I'm trying to say.
That seems fair. I mean, is quantum mechanics as it's taught today different substantially from 50 years ago?
Yeah, so good point. Good question. So I think you were saying earlier, like people refine the concepts, the way of presenting them, the way of organizing them, the notation even, to make it more streamlined and easier to use. So of course the process, like if I try to read those old papers, I'd be like, what is this crazy notation these guys have?
Sure,
it's insane. So of course it's been refined tremendously to the point where, like, if we go to Singapore, I don't know, there must be 3 or 4 good universities in Singapore where, they're teaching essentially, like, they have a cohort of kids. These kids had a really good high school education. They want to learn physics. 3 or 4 years later, they're ready to go to graduate school. They're ready to spend another 3 or 4 years to learn more stuff. And then they actually maybe understand something. Okay. And it's been pretty much every developed country on the planet has these institutions set up to train people who actually understand quantum physics. Sure.
And so I guess, personally, one of the things I love using about AI, I'm very curious. I'm not a physicist, but I feel like it allows me to learn things that I normally would have had to, I don't know, maybe go through a very dense textbook.
100%.
Or have to find a very patient tutor for me to ask my 100 stupid questions, you know? And so how do you see AI changing education? I mean, like, is this going to compress it? Is it going to fracture it into a million pieces? Like,
I think that for people that really want to learn and are open to using AI as a kind of mentor, they can accelerate their learning tremendously, for sure. But it will also make a lot of people lazy
Sure.
And they'll say, like, oh, why do I need to learn that? I can just ask AI about
ask
that.
the AI.
Yeah. So it's a very worrisome situation where the internet was like this too. So it could just be entertainment that you consume and it doesn't make you any smarter. But we all know, probably everybody where we are, we're at Network School in Forest City, right across the Strait, Johor. Is that the Strait of Johor?
I'm not sure
from Singapore. We're enjoying a beautiful view right now.
That's right.
Everyone here probably learned a ton by being on the internet, like finding things to read, reading thoughts of other excellent brain. Like, so there was already a kind of like stretching or bifurcation where like some people were more or less anesthetized by soma, by the internet soma, and others were like developing faster and faster because they could have more access to more information immediately, right? And AI is just going to exacerbate that.
So it's sort of like it's a selective pressure, and you can kind of, in some sense, you choose your own adventure in the sense that you can like use this to increase your power, or you can use this to sort of increase your lower your energy state, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So self tranquilize or learn faster and faster and faster.
Right. So it's like maybe the singularity at some level will be sort of optional or opt in.
It's funny you say that because there will be a lot of humans. Like you could even say like something happened. Like we went from like, oh, no artificial systems can pass a kind of Turing test like thing to like, oh, now everyone has every time you try to just do a simple Google search, there's some Turing test passing thing that starts talking to you, right? And but most people don't care. It's like their lives didn't change at all. It's like zero. They're like going to live through the whole singularity. Just like I didn't understand how things worked before. Why do I understand how things work now?
Sure, and I think I think part of enjoying life is like just enjoying the mystery. Like
Yes.
we don't know everything.
Of course, 100%.
And that's kind of fun.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, most people are in that. Like most people don't know how their microwave works.
Right.
So why care about this? Oh, my refrigerator started talking to me, and it's actually very smarter than me. It tells it tells me how many calories are in all the food. Who cares? I'm still good.
Sure,
Let's Netflix and chill.
So okay. So can we talk about genomics now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I saw your presentation about it was called
here at Network School.
We saw it at Network School. We're here at Network School.
We love Network School.
We're at Network School. And and so genomic predictions, is that the name?
It's singular though, genomic prediction.
Oh, genomic prediction.
Yeah.
So I saw your presentation, and I think I was certainly not up to date on the state of the art in genetics, and there were a few revelations from that.
Were you shocked by what you learned?
I wouldn't say shocked. I think it was more of a qualitative. Like I was like, oh, this is more powerful than I thought.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how predictive genetics are.
Yeah.
You showed things from like psychometrics to socioeconomic status to height, facial structure, also disease prevalence, and it seems like this is much more. I mean, in some sense, it's more deterministic than we thought.
Well, I just want to clarify that for the audience who didn't attend the talk. So, most traits are influenced by genes, but it doesn't mean there's zero environmental influence, right?
Of course.
So even if I have a genetic predisposition for heart disease, if I eat right and I exercise, I can ameliorate those effects, and I could maybe by very aggressive intervention, I could lower the probability that I am going to have heart disease as I get older. So we're not, for most things. I mean, there are a few exceptions like height, which is very heritable. As far as we can tell, if you have access to a good, nutritious childhood, good nutrition in childhood and exercise and whatever the things are you need, then the height you grow to seems to be largely determined by genes within a few centimeters.
Okay, so the nutrition kind of maxes out whatever your genes give you. Okay.
Yeah, so if you have all the environmental positive necessary inputs, genetics seems to set the limit. In a way, this was already known because if you take two identical twins who have the same DNA and you raise them in different families, so one adopted by an Italian family, they ate a lot of pastrami, and the other is adopted by some Germans and they ate sauerkraut. But the heights tend to be within like a half an inch when they grow up, as long as they weren't deprived of food or calcium or something. So that's an example of a highly, highly heritable trait. Whether you're going to get diabetes is much less controlled just by your genes.
Sure, okay.
But we can easily identify people that you are exceptionally low risk for diabetes. So even if you like drink Coca-Cola every day, you're probably not going to get diabetes. And then people who are very high risk for diabetes, and even if they just eat an ordinary diet, hey man, you're probably going to be diabetic by the time you're 40 or 50. So but it's not. We just have to be very nuanced because our message is not like genes control everything.
Sure, okay, I hear you.
We're not saying that at all, but we're saying the whole story is very nuanced, and it really actually depends on which trait or phenotype you're talking about. But there are traits that are heavily influenced by genes and DNA, and even figuring out which ones are and which ones aren't, or to what degree, it's called heritability, is a scientific question that deserves attention.
So I kind of think of it in terms of, from like blockchain world, but like there are some games that are like basically pure skill, like say like I don't know, Go or chess or something.
Yep.
And if you play perfectly, then then you have very predictable outcomes.
Yes.
Versus games like poker, where there's like it's maybe like half skill, half chance,
randomness.
And so but then you can imagine a whole spectrum of like then all the way to the end of like slot machines where there's no skill.
Yes.
And so I guess I kind of imagine each of these traits as being somewhere on this
perfect analogy.
Spectrum.
Yeah. How much does environmental variability affect the outcome versus, oh, hey, when you're an embryo and I read out your DNA, I already know.
So in some sense, there's a kind of I think this could inform like life strategies or like psychological attitudes where you say like, okay, like if I'm going to spend my calories on worrying about something and trying to like make sure you do it on something you actually have control over and not like
Yes. Good.
So tell me, can you just walk me through the whole IVF thing? Like what exactly is IVF and how does your company fit into that?
So the oldest IVF people who were produced as babies from IVF, the oldest ones are, I don't have the exact calibration, but it's probably in their 50s now.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So
because this has been around for actually quite a while.
Yeah, it's pioneered in the sort of late 20th century.
Okay.
Or mid to late 20th century. And I think Louise Brown is the first IVF baby born in the UK.
Oh, wow. Okay.
One of the members of that team that helped produce Louise Brown is on our scientific advisory board. So,
oh, cool. Okay.
So IVF means you hormonally stimulate the mother-to-be, or the one who produces the eggs. You get, instead of one egg per cycle, you might get a larger number, could be 10 eggs. You fertilize those eggs outside the woman's body, so in vitro. So you fertilize the eggs in the lab with dad's sperm. You let the egg then becomes an embryo because it's been fertilized, and it grows to a certain number of cells, say of order 100 cells. And from a biopsy, the DNA from a very small number of cells is amplified to the point where we can read out all the DNA letters.
I see.
Okay, so that's a physical wet lab process of, can you genotype embryos? So we were the first to do that in our company.
And does genotyping the embryos, does it change them, or it just?
Well,
you
did remove a few cells, but as far as anybody can tell, it doesn't damage them.
Okay.
Since you asked the question, there is the main body of the embryo, which is of order 100 cells when this is done. There's a top layer called the trophectoderm, and that is the part that will become the placenta. But it has the same DNA as the child. So we actually are not removing cells even from the embryo. We're moving them from the part that was going to, but we get the DNA information out. As far as we know, it does not damage the embryos.
Right, I guess it's kind of a quantum thing. Like you measure it, you affected it maybe a little bit, hopefully not too much, not in a bad way.
Right. I mean, the thing is growing like very fast at this stage. So like removing a few cells, as far as we can tell, does not damage it. This biopsy, in order to do some level of genetic screening of embryos, is now standard of care in the United States. So pretty much every embryo, 70% of all IVF embryos in the US go through this biopsy.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So it's considered safe.
Okay.
That's the wet lab, how do you read out DNA letters part of the story.
Okay.
The other part of the story, which is pure AI machine learning, is we look at data sets where you have 1 million people. Maybe they're in some national biobank. They volunteered to be in a scientific study. You have their DNA, their letter that you've read out, their genotype. You also maybe have their medical records. You also maybe have a measurement of their height. You also maybe have their IQ score. and you maybe have their income. Okay, you maybe have their divorce status. You maybe have whether they drink a lot. Okay, you have a bunch of information about them. And your powerful silicon brain thing uses them algorithms to build predictors for each of the complex traits.
So the
Do you have diabetes? When did you get diabetes? How old were you when you got diabetes? All that information is used to build a map between string of 3 billion genetic base pair letters to prediction for how tall you're going to be. Or
so if I could recap it, so you have input is this ACTG, all your DNA.
Yes, a list of letters.
And the output is a variety of life outcomes, health outcomes.
Yes. Phenotypes is the technical term.
Okay, phenotypes.
Genotypes and phenotypes.
So you're training a machine learning model to map genotypes to phenotypes.
Yes.
And
in fact, this is actually, if you think about this the way a physicist thinks fundamentally, first principles, this is biology, okay? So it's not enough to say like, hey man, James Watson, I had the pleasure of knowing Watson before he died. I never knew Crick, but hey man, Crick and Watson showed that like the information that's passed on from mother to child and in cells, that when the cell divides, what information is being passed to the other cell. It's this like double spiral thing, and it's made of amino acids. It's like, oh, we're done. Biology's solved. That's literally what we were taught in school when I was growing up. I'm like, what? Like, what? Like, well, how does the
how did I get diabetes?
How does the arrangement of the amino acids in this double helix that you love so much actually determine that, my forearm is this length and not 1 centimeter or 2 centimeters longer? Like how does that, so that's the physicist viewpoint. It's like, wait, you don't stop there. Like we didn't actually solve it.
Right, you observed a phenomenon, but we need a mechanism.
Yeah, and we need the causal relationship between things. And so I learned about this when I was a kid. Like when I first learned about DNA, I was like, well, wait, you're flipping, you're like, oh, biology book, you're like, where's the part about like how this works, what it's actually doing? Like, oh, we solved the human genome. Like, no, you didn't. Anyway, so
it's a little bit like a cargo cult where you're like, look, we made a
I mean, it's already non-trivial to say the thing which is passed on from parent to child.
Sure, it's a tremendous accomplishment.
Yeah, but it's only a partial solution to the problem.
Right.
And what I realized as a kid, when I looked at that, I was like, wait a minute, can we even read out these letters? And when I was growing up, we couldn't. The first human genome was done around 2000, and that cost like $1 billion. So at that time, I said, this is a fundamental question. Let's just mark that, bookmark that. This is a fundamental question that we know fuck all. We don't know anything about, even though people talk about heredity and but we don't actually know that much. And we're not going to solve this until we have an inexpensive way of reading out DNA from millions of people. Because otherwise, how would you figure out what caused what? If I genotyped one human and I'm like, oh, we're done. That's what they said around 2000.
Sure.
Like when Bill Clinton, you're too young to remember this. When Bill Clinton went in the White House and they announced the success of we have the first human genome map. And I'm like, okay.
Sure.
Okay, still partial solution. So finally, like 10 years later, as the cost of sequencing was going down at a super exponential rate, people like me, okay, little alarm clock went off. It's like, now's the time to get to work because we actually have the data that can address the fundamental questions of what is the map between these little DNA letters and whether you're going to get diabetes. Okay, and so now we can solve that problem, but we could not solve that problem until a bunch of technologies were mature enough to make it economically feasible.
So there was this sort of we saw. I was like, okay, there's this thing ACTG. It's super important.
Yeah.
But it's also extremely expensive at first to measure it.
Yeah.
And that's only one data
and complicated. 3 billion of these letters, right? So.
And then you also need the other side of the data set, the labels.
Exactly.
Right?
You need labeled data.
Yeah. So who's going to label all this data?
Yeah. And it wasn't until the big biobanks, which were funded by national governments, produced that labeled data. Now, once you have that labeled data, then it's an AI/ML problem to solve this.
But then, so and AI sort of, I feel like, partially digests it, right? Because I remember from your talk, you're saying, we can see that these regions influence this
Yes.
outcome. We don't even know exactly how.
Correct.
And the internal wiring of the neural network sort of doesn't exactly tell you. It might give you clues.
Yeah.
But it's of where to look more closely.
So we're still not completely done. Like, I mean, we made another step forward. The next thing that we would like is some kind of mechanistic causality. Like, to take a really obvious thing, like if I flip one DNA letter in a region that determines a particular protein that's used in your cell, and that protein maybe folds differently now, or just has a slightly different shape, or something about it is different because of that one letter change. Then I would like to know, what did that do? Does that mean the protein doesn't bind as well to this receptor or something, and therefore you get sick? Yeah. So every one of these things is like its own. Like so in biomedicine, you'd have people who just study one thing. They study one gene. And
one branch in the multiverse, right? Or one branching point.
Effectively,
right?
yeah. So the frontier of modern science and technology, the real frontier of it, is so complex. People might devote their entire life, 20, 30 years of research to like, okay, what is the effect on diabetes risk of this one mutation?
Wow.
And maybe that'll help us get a drug, like that's a good drug target, or blah, blah, blah. But people are working hard on this stuff.
Sure. Well, and can we talk about junk DNA? Or that's the old term, right? I mean, that was when I was in school. I remember we learned about, most of your DNA, it's junk. And then people were like, no, like the aliens are using it as a database, what do we know now about it?
We went through a period of time where there was a thing called, I forgot what it's called by the molecular biologists, something like the fundamental synthesis or something, which again is like marketing hype for like, we didn't solve the problem, but we made a step forward.
Sure.
So there was a time post Crick and Watson where we know this double helix thing, but because of the subsequent efforts of lots of molecular biologists, we learned that like DNA codes for proteins. DNA makes RNA, and then RNA makes proteins. That's like the whatever fundamental synthesis. I forgot what they're calling it, but they call it. But anyway, only some few percent of your genome is actually a region that codes for a protein. And then in between those so-called so for a while people were using the term gene to mean like region that codes for protein, because they assumed the stuff in between was junk. So like the important genetic information, gene, is the region that codes for proteins, and the stuff in between is like just junk. Okay, and then there's another gene here. So that was the point when I was learning molecular biology. That's what people thought, and of course, like being a physicist, I was like, no, I don't believe you. Like, what's the basis for that? And first of all, like
it's sort of like the dark matter of.
Well, but if you think about how complex these molecular machines are to like build a cell, how does the cell here know it's supposed to become an eye cell versus a cell of hair on your face? So there's so much complexity in there. I just could not believe that this stuff wasn't doing anything. And it turns out this stuff contains switches and all kinds of things that like determine the development of the cell or of an organism, and also like controls the expression of the gene, like how much of the RNA is produced, or how much, right? But then like you think like, how does that work? Like you have the DNA in the middle of your cell, but how is that signaling that make more of this RNA or something, right? So it's incredibly complicated molecular machinery.
Sure.
And so what we learn from these AI/ML studies is like, if I want to predict your height, the algorithm looks at the data and says like, these are the regions in your DNA which I need to know the state of that region to make the prediction. Okay, and many of those things that you need to know the state of are in that junk region. They're not changes in protein structure. There's something else.
So it's not junk.
So we know for sure now it's not junk, or at least lots of it isn't junk.
Sure.
Right.
So, and it would be a little weird for like the body to carry all this stuff around if it was completely useless.
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand a certain level of noise in the system,
Yeah.
or creativity or something. But so we've only got a few more minutes. But
Wow, we're almost out of time.
I got the notice.
I'm kidding.
But read
doing this.
I read okay, so there's some story about I forget the technical term, but like there was a I think a lizard that it develops its eye along a certain sort of growth pathway from birth to adulthood, but then if you remove the eye, it can regenerate it, but it does so through a different pathway. Like it grows out of the side of its skull instead of like from the stem of the whatever. So so it's like. So there's questions like that, like morphology.
Yeah.
Like how does DNA fully explain that, or do you think there's yet another mechanism that we need to discover to fully explain, like, why is my liver that size and shape?
Yeah. So I could rephrase your question as, can you capture all the heritability of a trait by just knowing the state of someone's DNA, or is there more information somewhere else?
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
Okay, and so this is called epigenetics. Okay, so in addition to the actual DNA letters that form your DNA sequence, which is present in every cell of your body, there are molecules that can attach to the DNA and maybe modify the expression of the genes or something, right? And that whole field of studying these little attachments, which are not fundamental modifications of the DNA letters, it's just gluing things to the...
It's kind of like a higher abstraction layer of like...
Well, just other stuff that could become attached to your DNA and modify it, right? Modify it what it does, okay? People like epigenetics because people don't like hereditarian views, okay? So it is true that there is some evidence for what are called epigenetic effects on phenotypes, but they're not as large as you would think reading the popular literature or the science section of the New York Times. However, it is part of the story.
Okay, let me ask you a few rapid fire questions about genetics. How heritable is IQ or intelligence real?
Oh wow, that's a short answer question.
Well, maybe a couple sentences.
We can, using very simple and relatively short tests, measure or estimate to some degree people's cognitive ability. And that information then can be used to make non-trivial predictions about life outcomes for people. Like whether they're going to be able to complete a PhD in physics.
Okay.
So it's real.
And how determined by your DNA is it? Is it like poker? Is it like slot machine? You know,
it's at least 50-50, and this is something that's heavily debated by people. Some people would say, it's barely 50% of the variance in cognitive ability comes from genetics. Other people would say, no, it could be 70-80%.
Okay, wow. Okay.
So it's a very...
So there's some uncertainty there, but it's like it's a serious factor. Though.
Yeah, there's some uncertainty which is legitimately scientific, and then there's just huge amounts of like propaganda ideology that's pushing people, but in both directions.
Sure,
I mean, there's some people who are like just like the hereditarian picture, and there's some people who are social justice warriors and they just can't accept any of it. And so that tends to completely polarize the discussion and make it horrible. So
right, there is a strange. It's like DNA is kind of taboo.
Yeah,
you know, and it's like, but it's also like
which is weird because it's like saying like quantum physics is taboo because I don't like it.
Right. Well, it's also like being ashamed about yourself. I mean, we're all made out of the DNA. This is like the fundamental building block of us.
Yeah.
And like you know, don't feel bad about it. Like you know, like So
yeah.
But okay, so can we talk just briefly about you're a quantum computing skeptic? Was that a fair characterization?
No, not at all.
Okay. What do you think is
I'm not a quantum computing skeptic, but I am realistic and unbiased because I don't have any monetary, pecuniary interest in like grifting from venture investors or scaring crypto bros. And Shor's algorithm was published, I think, in the early 90s, if I'm not mistaken, or around then. Yeah. And I actually, in the mid-90s, when I was a professor at Yale, I actually was considering like allocating more of my research time to quantum computing. And so I studied it carefully at the time. And some of my friends did go into quantum computation. So a lot of the key figures are people that I knew at that time who made that decision. And they've now spent the rest of their career doing quantum computing research. So I've sort of followed it. It's not my main area of research, but I'm interested in it. And as you can tell, having been a venture, both investor and operator, founder, I understand how this stuff works, the business works. And a lot of people are selling hype all the time, and investors don't understand physics, and et cetera, et cetera. So I might say something to you which is jarring because it's different from all the press releases that get converted into science articles by journalists. Okay, so I might say something to you that sounds jarring because it's at odds with the shit that you're reading, right? So
all right, let's hear it.
Well, it's a lot harder to build a quantum computer than people let on. A useful one that can actually implement Shor's algorithm in a way that could do something that's actually practically useful. And so the estimate used to be like 1 million qubits, you'd have to realize, and then maybe now with some fancier algorithms, but implementing those techniques are not trivial themselves. Maybe you only need 100,000 qubits. But if you have friends from grad school who are experimentalists who build these things, and you realize how hard it was for them to just get 10 qubits and actually be able to implement all the possible gate functions on those 10 qubits, like, oh, 100,000? It's not right around the corner, man.
Well, and that's 100,000 physical qubits.
Physical qubits.
So now, does that number come down?
Like a big warehouse, like a thing the size of this like office tower full of like cold atom traps that have to be moved around so that the laser beam can do the gate operation between the two. You know.
I mean, it sounds like an incredible engineering task to do something like that.
Yes.
But also, does that physical number comes down as the error correction gets better? Is that true?
Well, the relationship between the number of abstract qubits that you need to implement this Shor algorithm and the number of physical qubits that you really actually need is all in the error correction.
Okay.
Okay. So because you might need many to keep the state pure, to keep the state right or the entanglement right for this subset of qubits, you might need a bunch of other auxiliary qubits that can do error correction to fix environmental things that come in, right? And that's a multiplier. So between the Shor number for the abstract algorithm and the physical number that you need to really do it in the real world, where there's cosmic rays and air and experimenters who sneeze and whatever it is, right? Gravity. You need some multiplier. And previous estimates had said it's 1 million. Now there's some hype around some particular error correcting schema which gets it down to 100,000. But it's still a pretty big number.
It's a big number. And so I think, what, in your opinion, like from I guess maybe an investor point of view, at what point would you like what kind of signal would you look for that was sort of hard to fake? Not hype, not some marketing buzzwords.
Yeah. So the venture funds that maybe one of them, but most of the venture funds that I either work with or advise or whatever, don't necessarily invest in quantum technology or quantum computing. Okay. Everything is quantum technology to some extent.
Right. I mean, I guess it's all quantum physics, right?
But if I were to advise them, I would say hire an actual physicist who knows the field, have him go to conferences. When the press release from the Willow team at Google, when the actual paper that's related, not the press release, but the actual paper that they have to publish, which is related to that press release, is being discussed at the annual March meeting of the American Physical Society or at a Stanford seminar or whatever. Send your dude to that room, listen to the questions that the other physicists are asking the Willow guy. Watch the expression on the Willow guy's face as he realizes, and watch the number of times he says, that's just in the press release, or that's what the journalist wrote.
I see.
Watch the number of times that happens during the seminar.
That's the KPI for like how much distance is there between the engineering and the marketing.
And then your guy that you hired will come back and say, yeah, I know you love like scrolling Twitter on your phone, Mr. VC bro, and that's how you make your decisions or whatever, or like what post-quantum algorithm whatever it is, but maybe you should have gone to the seminar and listened to what was actually said between the people who are doing this. So
is your impression that the Google Willow, they claimed they had a below threshold error, that they've sort of cracked error correction at some level. Do you feel like that's an exaggeration?
Well, I think that it is an important step in this research to implement. So quantum error correction is itself a set of algorithms, and then like there's a question of like how are we implementing in the real world this set of? It's not just enough that they exist, right?
Sure,
you have
to actually do them.
Yeah, you actually have to do them. So then they're like, oh, press release. We implemented this particular error correction method, and we proved that we can use it to decrease below threshold so that errors don't continuously grow with every step of computation. They actually are maintained below some level. That's essentially the kind of result that they would announce. Now, that's great, awesome. Then you have to look and say, like, oh, wait, which error correction scheme did they implement? Oh, they implemented that one. Oh, what errors is that actually correcting? Is that actually correcting all the possible errors that you might encounter when you're doing a very long physical quantum computation? Or is it just some subset? Well, I guess we better look into that. Like, oh, what are the possible errors that can creep in? Well, I guess it depends on what the actual physical qubit is. So a superconducting loop like this is different from like a cold atom spin, which is different from some, So the set of errors that can creep in is itself dependent on the physical realization of the qubit.
Right, like which platform? Is this photonic
or
ionic?
Exactly. Is it sensitive to charge? Is it sensitive to vibration? What happens if... So it might be sufficient that like, oh, we're sure this is our scaling qubit. This is the thing that's going to be our physical scaling qubit that we're going to fill that entire office tower with a million of them to break your crypto code. Oh, we were sure of that. Although if you just do a poll, when you go to these physics conferences and you just poll all the physicists who work in the field, you say like, which of these is most likely to be the scaling qubit and how confident are you of that answer? You'll find like, nobody knows what the scaling qubit's going to be.
Do you have an opinion?
No.
Okay.
Because we don't know enough.
Sure. I'm just curious. Because
the level of BS that you've been subjected to is just huge. Like the local incentives are just for people to self-aggrandize their research and BS you. Okay. So we don't know what the scaling qubit is.
So,
okay.
Each team is sort of
until
focused on one, right?
Until you know what the scaling qubit is, you don't know what all the error syndromes are. Until you know what all the error syndromes are, you don't know really exactly how the error correction is going to work. So one proof of principle that we finally got an error correction method working in this setting, oh my God, short Bitcoin immediately,
it did respond immediately.
I know, but this is why we have to replace these ape brains with AIs as soon as with AGI as soon as possible. Because come on, it's not a serious way to run a civilization, right? So,
well, I mean, we built the thing. We deserve some credit for it, but
we're the bootloader species.
Sure,
there's something better, right?
The bootloader species. That's great. Now we got the exocortices now, and
if we had them, that would be great. But
So okay, but each of these teams is like say a different quantum computing team would be working on a different sort of platform. Like they would just be working on just ionic or just superconducting.
Usually, I think incredibly specialized to just like what are the properties of this particular cold atom system? How do you trap it? How do you make that trap economically viable so you can make lots of them? How to bring to if you need, say you have 100,000 qubits, and you're like, oh shit, the gate now has to do something to the entanglement between qubit number 456 and 478,200. Those two qubits have to now be brought close together so I can shine a laser that entangles both of them, does something, right? How do I get these? I have them stored. They're in different parts of the warehouse. How do I? So like people literally like talk about like little miniature locomotive train type things that all your atom traps are sitting on, and you can efficiently shuttle the stuff.
But so is it? Can I double click on that? How is it when you entangle two qubits? What's going on there?
Yeah. So what's happening is you're performing some operation where the evolution of the states of these two qubits is dependent on both, if you like, both state of A and state of B, and like a laser beam in which or some kind of electromagnetic field or something that causes an evolution which has the properties that I described. That's like a gate.
Okay.
Okay.
And so, but if I'm trying to specifically entangle two atoms, am I shining the same laser onto it? I have to break the laser into two, or
without going into details, the main thing you should just understand is like if one is on one side of the warehouse and one is on the other side of the warehouse, it's not that easy to perform a gate operation which involves these two specific.
You need to move them
you
physically
probably
close
need
together.
yeah you probably I mean well remember it's physics, we have to do things with
Physical,
we don't just woo it, like we're like, wouldn't it be great if the qubit in that corner of the room and the qubit downstairs in the cafeteria were to like become entangled and do something? Okay, sure. No, this is physics. It's not math or computer science. We can't just pretend that that happened. We have to fucking actually do it. And that involves physical things, real things, electromagnetic fields, photons, atoms. We only have a very finite list of things that perform the operation for us.
Sure. Okay.
And-
so
and-
there's, actually realizing this abstract mathematical idea
Yeah.
of a quantum computation
Yeah.
there's a lot of details.
It's at the limit of like complexity of things humans do.
Right.
Okay,
It's really pushing the frontier
Yes,
of what's
yes,
so
yes.
in some sense it's very inspiring, but we
Yeah.
also, it's sobering as well. So well, let me ask you.
It's not as simple as like, man, I vibe coded my ZK library, man, and I tested it. It's great. We're done.
Right.
It ain't
it's
like
different
that.
from software where you just have to utter the right magical incantation.
It's not software. It's hardware, which is hard.
I see. I see.
I don't want to be a Debbie Downer.
No,
okay?
I hear you.
I don't want to be a Debbie Downer because I do think we will eventually have quantum computers. It's all quibbling about the time scale.
Sure.
And there are some pessimists who will be like, nah, we'll never do this. But I don't think that's true. I think once we get AGI, it'll help us do it. But maybe apes themselves will have trouble with it. But we will have eventually quantum computers, and they'll do amazing things, actually. So I'm not saying that, but I am just saying like a lot of the perceptions of non-experts are warped because of an incentive system that I can explain in incredible detail to you how this incentive system causes people to overclaim.
It could be their own incentive system or somebody else's that they don't know about.
Yeah.
There's so many fishbowl lenses.
If you're on the Willow team within Google, you have to get money within the Google internal budgeting system, and you better have good press releases, and you better make sure that Sundar got to pimp your thing at Davos and like brag to some other head of state of Monaco that we made a big like the kind of shit you hear from these CEOs who literally understand zero about quantum mechanics. You'll hear them say at one of these meetings like, well, yeah, we made a big breakthrough on the type 2 error correction. They'll just use a bunch of but they want that, and then that determines how much money your group gets next year. So and it's like, of course the incentives are totally wrong for the pursuit of truth.
Yeah, so there's our society very deeply is on the one hand there's an incentive for truth in that it leads to technology and power. On the other hand,
the only check at the end is number one, as you said, like the thing better work. But if you got my career is 30 years, I want to be paid $500,000 a year by Google for those 30 years and just tinker with my atom trap. Cool. And all to do that, I just have to like work with the PR lady to comms lady to like phrase things the right way. The only problem is when I go to the actual seminar, they invite me to University of Chicago and they're like, hey, tell us what you guys are doing with Willow. The dudes in the audience are not playing ball. They're like, what? That's not true. Like, what? No, that's only in the press release.
That's the gap.
Of course, of course.
My PhD advisor used to tell me, he said, look, every person in their mind has two people. There's a politician and there's a scientist.
Yes.
And it's your
some
job.
people don't even have a scientist.
Your job as a scientist is to make the politician shut the fuck up.
Right. So the one test is, does it work? But if the does it work is always displaced like 10 years in the future, that's effectively no constraint on the behavior of the participants.
Right.
Then the only one, which is much weaker, is like, I don't really want to be embarrassed by my colleague or some young grad student who's like pointing out, that emperor is fucking butt naked. Like, wait, are you really saying that? No, I didn't say that. That's in the press release. Sundar said that, but he's not really in the weeds with us on that.
Yeah.
But so that's the delta. So if you're doing due diligence and you have a little bit of a budget, you can send your spies in to see like, well, who believes it?
I see.
Like
who believes it
unbiased?
Themselves?
Yeah. And which unbiased people who are yet experts in this actually believe what they're saying.
Right. So that could be your personal error correction algorithm.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, we're trying to get the signal, like what's actually going on, and it's actually not that easy.
Yeah. It's not easy, and I'm not criticizing anybody. Yeah.
But okay, let me just zoom out for a minute. You're sort of I think somebody who probably gives a lot of people advice. If you could wave a wand and like everybody in the world knew one fact.
Oh wow.
what would you put into
Well,
their minds?
one fact.
One fact.
Wow.
It's like you're everyone's kindergarten teacher for like 15 seconds.
Oh my God. That's a good question, but a very tough question.
It doesn't have to be perfect, just like, but what do you think is like a fundamental, like what would correct so many errors? What would maximize error correction amortized across the whole planet?
I'll tell you what I explained to some of my beginning, like I teach a class called Physics for Poets, which is for non-specialists.
Okay.
There's like something I teach them right at the beginning of the year that some people get intuitively, but other people have trouble with, which is when we communicate, when two humans communicate, usually you're only kind of giving one bit of information, like, I believe X is going to happen. Okay, and most people are just satisfied with that. But if you have 2 bits or a few more chunks of information where you say, I think X is going to happen with high conviction, medium conviction, low conviction. Just that extra auxiliary piece of information already amplifies tremendously like the value of the message. And surprisingly, like in at trading firms or sophisticated law firms or whatever, they're like training their own staff to communicate this way. So you never just say X or I believe X. You say I believe X, and then you try to qualify it with some confidence thing. Or you could even say like I don't know what the confidence interval is, but just like training your teams or just 2 people to be that way is a big value add to the level of communication.
That's interesting. It's almost a kind of like lubricant in the sense of, because they say certainty is a false prophet.
Yeah, right.
And so you
right.
like, if you have this sort of like very it's kind of like the classical and quantum distinction is like actually like stick a probability distribution into your statements.
100%.
So I have a sense of like, okay, or like in the SEC documents, they're like you need to expressly say this is a forward-looking statement. It may not turn out correctly, or like the Muslims say, inshallah. To be like, okay, we're not sure if God wills it. Then maybe it'll happen. So just having like a little bit of wiggle room makes it a lot easier to have a conversation.
Even 3, just a 3-value thing: high conviction, medium conviction, low conviction. I say statement X, and then I give you one of those 3 numbers. I could literally like not even say the thing. I could just say like statement and then 0, 1, 2.
Sure. And then
it's already like a huge enhancement of like.
Well, but it also, in order to be able to make that statement, you have to have a kind of honest.
You're thinking harder about it, and you're questioning why. Why am I saying X? Like, on what basis is it a 2? Why is it not a 1? Why is it not a 0?
Right, and you're also necessarily invoking metacognition, where you're thinking about your own thoughts and then evaluating their qualities.
Not to mention biases.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's a certain degree of honesty that it invites as well. Yeah.
That little thing, that little behavioral change invokes all of epistemology because it's like, how do I know what I know, and what is the defensible confidence level in what I'm saying?
What is the mapping between statements and this number?
Yes.
There's somehow I'm making that mapping. What justifies it? How do I do that?
So when I teach it in my like Physics for Poets class, some people are just like, this is so obvious, because like I'm like, they're used to like, they tell their buddy like the Bucks are going to win tomorrow night, and like I am 100% sure, so they understand what it means. Maybe they bet on sports or something. But then other people are just like, wow, this is crazy. What? Your probability, like, likely or not, more conviction, low. They're just like totally overwhelmed by this, and they can't speak this way. They actually, the amount of rewiring in their thought process for them to shift to that mode of thinking is just, they can't overcome it.
So you think this is a kind of one of these kind of like maybe fundamental building blocks of higher order thinking,
rationality, and also good team. Like in your startup, when your head of sales comes and you're like, I have a board meeting next week. What is our projected sales figure for next quarter? And the guy, your head of sales, like those little bead of sweat coming down, and he says, I think it's going to be 2 million plus, at least 2 million. And then the next thing is like, what's your fucking conviction on this? Because if you say high conviction and it's not 2 million, I'm going to fucking kill you, right?
Right.
But then like if you didn't get that conviction number from him later, you come back and you missed, right? And then he's like, well, that was low. I mean, I wasn't sure at all. I thought you just needed a number for the board.
Sure.
It's like there's a huge difference between right, like.
Well, because there's this whole like, everybody tells the boss what he wants to hear.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to lose their job.
Yeah. But if it's more like, I want your high conviction things to be pretty much mostly right. And if it's low conviction, stay low conviction, right?
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, and so to some extent, I think for this to be, from a cultural point of view, for this to be widespread, it needs to be somehow like acceptable, or like maybe reduce the shame around making errors.
100%.
You know, because
if it's low conviction, there's no shame.
Right.
Right. It's like, look,
I'm just guessing.
This is the best we can do, right? And I made my best guess. You got to put a number in there because the board can't tolerate an error
or a question mark.
They can't tolerate a plus or minus. Right.
So collapse this qubit before you give it to me.
It's got to be one number, right? It's got to be one number because the Excel spreadsheet only. So, okay, I gave it to you, but it's low conviction.
Do you have any fun predictions for the future? You know,
AI is going to transform the world very fast.
Like next year, like 5 years?
No, 5-ish years.
Okay.
I think in 5-ish years we'll see things that, in the common parlance, when you say AGI. It won't actually be AGI, but to the average person, it will kind of appear to be AGI. And I think we'll have that in 5, maybe 10 years.
And do you have like a sort of like, what's your new Turing test, or like I guess the AGI test? Like what's your personal threshold for like, okay, I'm convinced this is.
So one of my main activities right now is actually helping some of the big labs with making their AIs, the models, better at physics and math.
Oh wow, okay, yeah.
And so we can. If you're a professional, like if you're a leading researcher, you can tell the models are confused about some things and they can't really learn from what you're saying to them the way like a really good human colleague could learn. And you can see that. So I can
when they have a shallow understanding, or they can't quite put Humpty Dumpty
together.
Well,
they can't update because they always revert back to what's in their weights.
Sure.
So I have a kind of personal set of Turing test things that all models will currently fail, but my good colleagues who are professional scientists will pass. And what it is you know, if you're a good scientist, you know things in the literature that are wrong or misunderstood by the vast majority of people. But that's the training stuff that went into the model.
Right.
So you can go up to a colleague and I can unconfuse them because they can do continuous learning and they can update on the fly. And I can unconfuse them, and they don't automatically just revert back to the pre-training weights.
Right.
But the models always do that.
Interesting.
So that's still a problem. That's a problem that, first of all, might require some architectural changes to transformers to fix.
Sure.
But also, it's a thing which we want to find all of those things and at least change the weights to move the models so they're better scientists. And so that's actually what I spend most of my time on right now.
That's really interesting. I feel like. Maybe like in an analogy, it's like in a dream, you may encounter other beings, and it may seem like they're separate entities.
Yeah.
What is the sort of, how do you detect the difference between like this is just a kind of like creative rehashing of my own mind versus this is a genuinely external being with its own sentience, and I think there's some part of it is like the amount of surprise.
Okay.
In the sense of like, if it's telling me stuff I didn't know that turns out to be actionable, like I can, like it tells me the future and now I can like act on that and make money, or like it tells me how to build a spaceship and like that would be sort of a local proof of, or at least evidence that this thing is like, sort of.
But it still may not fully satisfy your notion of AGI. It may just know a lot of stuff that you don't know.
Right. Which is
because I don't know how to build a spaceship, but it might be like, well, here's how the liquid oxygen thrusters work or something, and then like, oh wow, that didn't come from my brain because I don't know that, and then
but then like maybe humanity as a collective is looking at this thing and like, okay, well, some human knew that thing.
Good point. So one of the things I think one of the guys on your team are related to you. He and I had a discussion about this. His view is a very strong one that the models will never innovate. They'll never produce anything that isn't just kind of like a recombination of things that are in its training data. That may be true. However, it might combine things in interesting ways that humans wouldn't otherwise have combined them. And that still might seem to us like actual creativity or ingenuity. So it's a very subtle question.
Yeah, I think, people, when they talk about like, is it going to come up with a new idea?
Yeah.
I think
what do you mean by new idea?
Right. And I think if you model it as a Boolean, then it becomes, it's quite hard to sort of, and it becomes quite debatable about how, but I think if you model it as a float, I mean, most humans don't come up with very new ideas.
100%.
Maybe you have like, the specific string of characters
Yeah.
that you utter has probably never been exactly uttered
Yeah,
before.
but if you map it into this embedding space of concepts, it's been uttered a billion times by other people, right?
Exactly. It's somewhere in the, close to
Yeah.
the center of the bell curve.
Yeah.
But then, so getting to the edge of the bell curve is hard, whether you're a human or an AI.
Yes,
right?
correct.
And so, but I've been watching Terrence Tao's work, and I feel like he's somebody who's already at the edge of this bell curve.
Yes.
And he's using AI to push a little bit further.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think, people have, I think there's so much meaning we've attached to like, identity and like, this is who I am because I accomplished this thing.
Yes.
And so then that creates this gravitational force that like kind of sometimes prevents people from like, using something new and
Yes.
learning something new. Be like, because being in Bali, we know a lot of artists. There's a lot of creative people are
Who
attracted
hate
there.
AI.
Well, actually, I'd say it's split.
Okay.
We saw people who were extremely threatened by AI
Yeah.
and kind of immediately created a like negative mythology around it.
Yeah.
And then we saw some people who immediately embraced it
Yeah.
and became basically just became more powerful artists
Yeah,
from it.
superpowers.
And it happened like that.
Yeah.
It was like, I mean, I've played with these things. I'd say I can like, I'm not very skilled with them, and I see there is a skill level with it. Like a skilled artist with an AI
Yeah.
can do so much more than
Yeah.
like somebody who's just like
they embrace it. Yeah.
So I do think that there's like, but the scientific community also has this, right? That where you know, some
100%.
people will be like scared or threatened
Yeah.
by this thing and like in competition with it. And it's
Yeah.
like, there's
Yeah.
an opportunity here. I mean, this is
I
like,
agree.
And
I think the people that are open-minded specifically in scientific research are realizing that it gives them superpowers, and it can speed up their research quite a bit. And other people are just very negative, and they're worried that like the whole world's going to be dominated by AI slop. Even the science journals are going to be full of AI slop. So,
which I mean, I think that it, to a certain extent was already happening.
Sure.
It was like it was human slop.
Yeah.
It was like,
Right.
This is quantum garbage.
Right.
So I guess last question. What would you do to improve academia, right? There's a lot of problems in the whole process of academia that I'm sure you're aware of. And I think there's a lot of debate about how is academia, the university going to change in the light of AI, but also how do we depoliticize it, make it more scientific and truth-seeking? Like what would be, if you could wave a wand and do that?
a lot of what's done in the university is bullshit. A lot of whole subjects that you can get a degree in are just bullshit. And so I would get rid of them. Now,
just axe entire departments.
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
of
all
course.
right.
Speaking
Do you
as,
want to name names?
Speaking as a former university administrator, just as I kind of like tried to outline the causal mechanisms behind the quantum computing hype that you've been sadly subjected to for years, I can do the same thing for what's going on at universities. So imagine a group of people get together and they're like, you know what? Environmental social justice theory is a very important thing. And at first, it doesn't really have its own department. It's like a few scholars, some from economics, some from literature, decide this is interesting, and they decide to have meetings on this thing, and they talk about it. And it's really enjoyable to them, and they're like actually very idealistic and trying to improve the world.
Sure.
But maybe there's not that much content in what they're doing, or maybe it's all talking and there's no empirical tests of what they're doing, and maybe they have no impact actually on the way governments structure society. For whatever reason, it could be bullshit, right? But if they can just convince some university administrators, other professors that, we should have a interdisciplinary program in X, which then evolves to a department of X, and then Department of X awards degrees in X, and even PhDs in X, and then those people become professors at other schools that now have a Department of X. And academia has been subjected to this for not 100, it's more the modern era. It's been subjected to this for generations now. So now we have growth in all kinds of these subjects, which honestly, like, people are not going to like this, but compared to core subjects like physics or mathematics or electrical engineering or, statistics, like, they really have way, way, way less value and have way, way, way less content. But they're there because of the process by which these internal structures are created. And once they're created, you can't get rid of them. The fight that a provost or president or senior administrator or dean would have to try to get rid of one of these programs is very asymmetrical. If I just leave them alone, they don't bother me. If I try to actually zero out that program, it's almost impossible. I suddenly make a huge number of enemies. All the alumni of that program, all the professors in that program, all the students in that program, their number one goal now becomes to destroy me as provost or dean.
So it's kind of like cancerous bureaucracy.
You can never get rid of, you can never get, once you have these vested interests, you can never get rid of them in the academy. And whereas at a company, it's a little different because there's like a very clear metric, like, hey, is this unit earning money?
Right.
Oh, it doesn't earn any money. It's gone.
Right.
In the academy, it's like, well, this is very interesting. A lot of people are interested in this. We economists made our own bullshit Nobel Prize. There's not actually a Nobel Prize in economics, but they literally, like, if you read the writings of those fuckers who like were like conspiring to create, let's go to the Bank of Switzerland and let's try to get them to put the money.
It's a banker prize, not the Nobel Prize.
it's hilarious, but if you actually study that process, it's a very good microcosm of prestige engineering within academia, which allows special interests within academia to grab power and resources. And economics is like the number one most successful fake discipline that has basically just continuously tried to grab power. Like if you ask guys on Wall Street, quants, or people who actually trade money, like how useful these guys are, they're not useful. They'd actually rather hire CS, math, physics grads to actually staff their trading desks. They don't want to actually hire those guys.
Interesting.
But on campus, economists lord it over social scientists and humanists, saying like, we're the real world, we understand the real world. I don't know what quantum mechanics is, but we understand the real world.
Sure.
Yeah, so the layers of bullshit are just unbelievable. And there's no cleansing revenue number that just like, okay, you guys are done. Like you said this product would sell, it didn't sell a single fucking thing, you're out. Right. All of you, this whole unit, you're all fired. Never happens in academia.
Well, until the entire country fails.
You guys said you could predict what's going to happen in the economy. You literally cannot predict anything. You're all fired. Oh, that never happened in academic economics, right? Never happened.
We've run out of time. We're getting kicked out here, but we'll do the fist pump.
Yeah.
How do you like NS? Is it cool?
NS is awesome. If you're an agentic person who wants to meet other interesting people, lock in, grind on your startup, or maybe get ideas for your next thing, definitely consider coming here. It's a beautiful place. You also get very fit. There's so many like pumped up dudes here. It's unbelievable. But anyway, yes, I highly recommend NS.
We're G-maxing over here.
Yeah.